Hello everyone, welcome back, and today I wanted to make a video talking about what's next for Barcelona after winning the round of 16 game against Napoli, and I thought it was a pretty impressive display. Obviously, it didn't look completely comfortable for Barcelona, but I don't think any Champions League knockout stage game is ever going to look comfortable, and Barcelona, the most important thing was getting to the quarterfinals, and luckily they did that yesterday. And there are still two round of 16 games to be played, Dortmund versus PSV, and Atletico versus Inter Milan, but really no matter the result of both of those games, the next opponent for Barcelona is going to be a very difficult game. And we expected that. It's the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Of course, it wouldn't be any different. To be the best in Europe, you have to beat the best. And so, whoever Barcelona matches up against next, it's not going to be an easy game for Barcelona. And looking at the remaining 8 teams, it's Man City, Real Madrid, Bayern, PSG, Barcelona, Arsenal, and then either PSV or Dortmund, and then Atletico Madrid or Inter Milan. So no team that Barcelona matches up against, it's going to be an easy game. Of course it's not. But luckily, I think there is good news that Frenkie de Jong seems likely that he's going to be back for the first leg. So that's a big boost for Barcelona. And also Xavi was asked yet again if Barcelona do win the UCL, would he stay at Barcelona? And his answer is still the same. I have no clue what the reporters are doing, continuing to ask him the same exact question, acting like his answer is going to change. His decision is final, and it's the right step for Barcelona going into the future. I do think they need to make a change, but for Xavi, I hope he can end his Barcelona coaching career in a positive light, and that's continuing to progress in the Champions League. I think that would be a great way to send Xavi off. And obviously there was a lot of emotion after the game, and a lot of Barcelona fans were celebrating that win, and rightfully so. They deserve to celebrate, and now it's up to Barcelona, no matter who they play, to give 100%, and I really think they can go up against anyone. Obviously, if you pull Man City in the quarterfinals, it's looking a little bit difficult for Barcelona, I will be honest, but I still think any team they come up against, they have the possibility of winning, of course. And looking at the other 7 teams that are in the quarterfinals, of course, the easier game that everyone has already talked about is whoever wins PSV versus Dortmund. That is not a guarantee, of course. That is not going to be an easy game, but the easier game compared to all the other teams in the bracket would be Dortmund versus PSV, whoever wins that game. And I wanted to talk about the other teams that I think Barcelona might match up better against. I would think someone like PSG, even though they do have the best player in Europe right now, I think Barcelona's midfield, I think they could dominate in a game like that. And especially if Frenkie de Jong comes back, I think that would be a big boost in that game. Although, of course, Pedri and Gavi still being out injured, that doesn't help the midfield at all, of course. Those are 2 of the most important players in Barcelona's team. But I still think Barcelona, they could match up pretty well against them. But, of course, the other team has Mbappe, and if that's the case, it's always going to be very difficult to get a win against that team. And a lot of people are also talking about a potential matchup between Barcelona and Bayern. And I think a lot of Barcelona fans do not forget that game. Of course, you're not going to forget that game. But I think Barcelona, I think they would have a better chance against Bayern than of course they did in 2020, the last time they progressed through the round of 16 to the quarterfinals. And I think that was also the year that they beat Napoli in the round of 16. So who knows, maybe this script would have Barcelona versus Bayern again. And Bayern are still a great team. Of course, if Barcelona draw them, it's not going to be an easy game. Again, no team that you draw in the quarterfinals is going to be an easy game. But for Bayern, I think they have been a little bit underwhelming in the Bundesliga, at least when I've watched them. I think a lot of people do have issues with Thomas Tuchel, and I don't think their situation is as secure as it was the last time Barcelona and Bayern faced each other. Last year's group stage of the Champions League, Barcelona, of course, drew a very difficult group with Bayern Munich and Inter Milan, and those were difficult games, but I really think in both of those ties, Barcelona did look like the better team. I know maybe some people will not agree with me, but that away leg in Bayern, when Barcelona were the away team, I remember those great jerseys versus Bayern Munich, and I think they really played great in that first half. And a couple decisions could have went their way, and Barcelona really could have gotten a win in that game, but of course that didn't end up being the case, but I still think that was a very positive display from Barcelona. And the same thing with Inter Milan, and I don't want to talk about the referee just after a year, like it doesn't really do anything now, but Barcelona, they easily could have gotten a penalty. In the last few minutes of the game, I want to say, I think it was Ansu Fati that headed the ball down to someone's hand, and it absolutely should have been a handball. Again, it doesn't matter, it's been a year, but Barcelona matched up very well against Inter Milan, but this Milan, it looks very different, even though in the last year's Champions League knockout stages, they did make it to the final, and they only lost 1-0 to Man City. And again, we don't know who the next opponent is going to be. I think Barcelona, it would be nice if they would not face Man City until possibly the semifinals or the final. I think that would be nice, but honestly, I think someone like PSG, maybe Inter Milan or Atletico Madrid or PSV and Dortmund, I think those would be maybe the more realistic expectations for Barcelona to progress, because I think, of course, if they come up against someone like City with such a great team, coached by the greatest coach in the world, that's going to be a difficult tie for Barcelona. But again, I'm not saying it's impossible at all. I think Barcelona, they really do have a chance against anyone in the quarterfinals. And it's been about 24 hours since that game against Napoli, and just collecting my thoughts, I feel like Barcelona, yes, they didn't have the most convincing performance. I would say that they didn't look comfortable at all times, but again, that's not really expected in a Champions League knockout stage. But for Barcelona, of course, you're expecting a little bit more control and a little bit more dominance, because in the first leg against Napoli, they did dominate for large parts of the game. Really, the 60th to the 75th minute in the first leg was the only time that Napoli really even had a chance in that game. But I think that was largely due to the fact that Barcelona did play another attacker on the field, and they played without Pedri and Frenkie de Jong, which are the two players on Barcelona that control the ball the best and that move the ball so well that helps Barcelona maintain control in the game. And so Barcelona, without them, of course, they're not going to be as controlled in the midfield. So I wasn't really surprised by that. And the two changes from the first game against Napoli to the second, in the midfield, in the offensive line, it was Rafinha and Fermin Lopez for Pedri and Frenkie de Jong. So I wasn't really surprised by the lack of control, because you're adding two attack-minded players. And Fermin Lopez, he scored a goal, and Rafinha, he hit the post, which created the second goal. So, there's some pros and cons in that, because you're going to have a little bit less control, but you are going to look a little bit more threatening going forward. And I felt like that was the case yesterday. And I had a comment yesterday saying that game proved that Barcelona should go back to three attackers. And I definitely agree in the case that Barcelona are missing Pedri and Gavi and Frenkie de Jong, because when those three players come back, then maybe you would play with four midfielders. I would understand that. Realistically, I would definitely want three attackers, because I think it's just much more exciting, and I think Barcelona, they just look a little bit more dangerous going forward when it's not just Lewandowski and then Lamine Yamal, because I think that's expecting a lot from Lamine Yamal to just create something out of nothing, because he's really the only attacker that moves and that's exciting to watch, no offense to Lewandowski. But I think right now, yes, I would agree that Barcelona, they should be playing with three attackers instead of four midfielders. I think Cubarsí has cemented himself, of course, as a first-team player, but also as the starting center back for Barcelona, because he was deservedly named the man of the match, and just an incredible performance from him. 17 years old. You just cannot believe how good he was yesterday. And moving forward into the rest of the season, is the best back line Koundé, Araujo, Cubarsí, and João Cancelo? I believe so, and a lot of people did talk about João Cancelo. The fact that he scored a goal was great, but also I do think he got caught sleeping a couple times, and the Napoli player did have a header, I want to say 5 feet away from the goal. Did put it off target, luckily, but we kind of expected this from Cancelo, though, is I do think his positives going forward, they outweigh his cons defensively, even though sometimes he is a liability at the back. I want to say another thing for Barcelona is that I highly doubt that Barcelona are able to win La Liga this season. You want to be realistic. Of course, you want to be positive, and I believe that anything can happen. I think Madrid just look too good right now. I just don't think they're going to drop that many points, and I think Barcelona's beginning of the year form, it just cost them this title race, and I'm fine with that. I hope Barcelona, they do focus on getting top four to qualify for the Champions League next season, and I hope they put everything into the Champions League run this year. And so that means resting your players. That means a lot of rotation, and I don't want to see Lamine Yamal starting every single game up until the next Champions League tie, because of course you want to see him continue to get minutes to maintain good form, but at the same time, you don't want to risk him in these La Liga games, because I would much rather see someone like Dani Rodriguez from Barcelona's B team make his debut and play as a winger, because I think that would be the best bet for Barcelona, to make sure that you're not overplaying your youngsters. And the same can be said about Cubarsí. I know it's really exciting to have that good of a center back, and of course, you want to play your best players every single game, but for the long-term future of this season, and for the long-term future of Barcelona, you want to make sure that you're resting and you're rotating your players, and for Xavi, I hope that he does that in the next couple games leading up to the quarterfinals in the Champions League. And if anyone knows when the Champions League draw is, if you would please let me know in the comments, that would be great. And also, before I forget, I did make a Barcelona Discord with my friend, and I'm going to put it along with the description of this video. If you all would like to join, that would be great. And I know looking at the remaining teams in the quarterfinals, again, it doesn't really matter who wins Atletico Madrid or Inter or PSV and Dortmund. Those are just great teams. All 8 teams in the quarterfinals are going to be great, and it's never going to be an easy game, no matter who Barcelona gets. But it's the Champions League. You can't really expect anything different. To be the best in Europe, you have to beat the best. And so it doesn't really matter who Barcelona play. Of course, getting PSV or Dortmund instead of City, yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be a luxury. But still, you're going to have to play the best teams eventually. And I think Barcelona, anyone they come up against, I think they have the talent to pull off a win. And I think that bump that Barcelona got past in the round of 16 against Napoli, I think that was really important for Barcelona's future and also for the rest of this season, because I think it gives the team the confidence they need to go forward and not be worried about who they play, because, a round of 16 knockout stage game, there's a lot of nerves there, and especially for players that have never played in a round of 16 game. And that was great to see all the players have full confidence in themselves. Players like Lamine Yamal and Kubarsi, they're stepping into their first, Champions League knockout stage, and they did so well. And I think for the future of Barcelona, that was a really important win. And I think of players like Gundogan and Cancelo, Gundogan just coming off a treble-winning side, being the captain of that team. Of course, he expected at this point in the season to be competing for all trophies, and really, what's left for Barcelona right now is the Champions League, and of course they're going to go 100%, no matter who they play. If it's Man City, they're still going to go 100%, of course, because you have nothing to lose. And going forward, it's hard to predict the starting lineup because I'm not sure when the game is. I'm guessing it's going to be in a couple weeks, and you don't know what Barcelona's squad is going to look like then. I hope Frenkie de Jong is back and healthy. I doubt that Pedri is going to be. I hope that Pedri's back at some point in this season, and even if he's not, that's okay. You don't want to rush him back. Give him all the time that he needs, but a player like Frenkie de Jong being added into the quarterfinal first leg, that would be crucial for Barcelona. Like I said, I don't think Rafinha on the left is going to be a long-term solution for Barcelona, and I think if he comes up against a really good defense, I think Barcelona would struggle with him being on the left because that's just not his preferred side, and it takes away a lot of the things good that he can bring to Barcelona. But he did prove me wrong because I thought he was going to be a passenger in that game, but he still found a way to make the difference for Barcelona. And of course, he almost had the goal, but also had the assist, and that was huge for the team. And of course, it matters who you match up against. I know a lot of Barcelona fans now, they don't really want to see four midfielders, and since Pedri is not going to be back for that game, it would be Frenkie de Jong, Gundogan, and Christensen, and I think that is a great midfield, and that gives the stability that you need to add a third attacker to the team, whether that's Vitor Roque, whether that's João Felix, Rafinha. We don't know who's going to be healthy for that game yet, and it's obviously difficult to decide right now because the game isn't going to be for a while. But for Barcelona, I think the most important thing in La Liga, of course you want to continue to try and win games, but you also have to rotate because Barcelona, they still have the Champions League to worry about, and for La Liga, I just think that Barcelona's first half form this season, it hurt Barcelona in the long run. Of course it did. And Barcelona, I just don't think they've been the best team in La Liga this season. So I don't think they're going to go on and win the title. Of course, you're going to fight until the end. But I just think Barcelona, maybe their focus should be on the Champions League. And they should be trying things out in La Liga. Of course, you're trying to get wins still, but rotate your players. Don't overplay your youngsters. That's never going to help. And in the end, no matter who Barcelona draw, it's going to be a very difficult game. Barcelona are going to have to prove that they're one of the best teams in the world if they want a chance to progress to the semis. And that's a really exciting task for Barcelona. And luckily, if Frenkie de Jong is back, I think that's going to be a huge boost to Barcelona's chances. And no matter who Barcelona draws, they have a good chance against anyone because they have the team available. Even though this season has been underwhelming, I think they proved in that game against Napoli that they can get through to these difficult games and they can find a way to score important goals. And they have players like Rafinha, Lamine Yamal that can step up in these big moments. And Barcelona, whoever they draw, they have a good chance to go through. And I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the Champions League and some afterthoughts after that game against Napoli. And we're not going to find out who Barcelona draws for at least a couple days, I would imagine. Maybe it's going to be on Friday. Maybe they do it on Monday. I don't remember. But, it's going to be a while until we find out who it is. And I'll do more of a breakdown from who Barcelona's opponent is going to be. But right now, it's not going to be an easy game, no matter who Barcelona draw. And that's completely fine because it's the quarterfinals of the Champions League. You would expect nothing different. And the Dortmund versus PSV and the Inter Milan versus Atletico games, they're currently going on right now. So we'll have to wait and see which of those two teams join the last 8, and whoever it's going to be exciting ties all around. I mean, those 4 quarterfinal games are going to be so exciting to watch. And for Barcelona, I'm really excited to see how well they do. And as always, thank you very much for watching my video. I really do appreciate it. And I'm going to leave the Discord in the bio. If you all would like to join, that would be great. And hopefully Barcelona, they find out their opponent soon. It's very exciting to find out who Barcelona are going to play in the quarterfinals. And again, thank you very much for watching my video. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.